He was still there. They could hear him, 20 feet away, humming. And then, mid-note, he just wasn't. No footsteps, no struggle, no sound of something going wrong. Just silence where a person was standing 2 seconds before. Tonight, we are looking at 3 cases where people did not get lost. They did not wander off. They did not panic and run. They vanished while someone who loved them was looking directly at them. This is Obscure Nights. One thing connects all 3 of these accounts that none of the witnesses understood until they were asked the same question separately. Each of them described the moment of disappearance using a sound. Not what they saw, what they heard or stopped hearing in the exact second it happened. Hold that, because by the end of tonight, that detail is going to reframe every story you just heard. The fire had been going for 3 hours and everything was exactly right. That is the detail I keep coming back to. Not that something went wrong. Everything was exactly right. The fire was at that perfect stage where it does not need attention. Cole and Danny were arguing about something neither of them would remember the next morning. The Smokies in October smell like cold and wood smoke, and the specific sweetness of fallen leaves beginning to break down. I have been camping in those mountains since I was 19, and I know what that air feels like when a night is going the way it is supposed to go. Elias stood up and said he was going to get more wood. 20 feet. That is the distance between our fire and the red oak we had been using as our wood source for 3 years of this trip. 20 feet of dark. He had walked it a dozen times over 2 days. He grabbed his flashlight, pointed it at the tree line, and started walking. He started humming. Old song his father used to play. Something slow. Something I could not name but recognized. He always hummed when he walked away from a fire at night. I'd never thought about why until after, but standing there now I understand it perfectly. It was a way of saying, I am here. I am fine. My sound is my presence when my body is in the dark. The humming was clear for the first 10 feet, then slightly muffled as the tree line took him. Then just barely audible. The specific quality of sound coming from 20 feet away through October undergrowth. Then, not the end of a phrase. Not a natural pause. Not the kind of silence that has a breath inside it. The kind of silence that arrives when something stops producing sound at the exact moment it was producing it. Cole looked up first. Then Danny. Nobody said anything for 4 seconds. We were all doing the same thing, waiting for the humming to come back, waiting for the note to resolve, waiting for the explanation that does not require anyone to stand up and check. It did not come back. We found the wood stacked neatly at the base of the red oak. His flashlight was on the ground, beam pointing straight up at the canopy. Still running. The battery was good for another 6 hours. His right boot was beside the wood pile. Laces still tied, placed on its side with the care of something set down deliberately rather than fallen. No left boot anywhere. No tracks beyond the last set of prints at the base of the tree. No broken branches. No disturbed leaf cover. Cole aimed the flashlight up. I want to be careful about how I write what we saw because I have replayed it many times and I want to be precise. 40 feet up in the canopy of the red oak, in the fork between 2 major branches, there was fabric. Dark green. The specific dark green of Elias's jacket. Folded, not snagged, not torn. Folded and placed in the crook of that branch the way you place something you want to stay put. None of us spoke for a long time. Then Cole lowered the flashlight. We walked back to the fire. We sat down. And after about 10 minutes, Cole said, "We are not going to report the jacket." We all knew why without him explaining. because reporting the jacket meant answering the question of how it got there. And the answer to that question, whatever it was something none of us were equipped to hold in a sheriff's office at midnight in the Smoky Mountains. Elias's right boot is in the Sevier County evidence log. His jacket has never been officially reported. I have thought for 3 years about whether we made the right call, about what would have had to happen to fold a jacket and place it 40 feet up in a tree, about whether whatever put it there knew we would look up, a humming that stopped mid-note, a boot with laces still tied, a jacket folded 40 feet up in a tree that 3 people agreed never to report because they were afraid of what the question would mean. If Obscure Nights is where you come for the cases that do not resolve, subscribe right now. Story 2 is the one that happened in 3 seconds, and the detail that makes it impossible is not what disappeared. It is what the water did after. 3 seconds. I am not asking you to imagine 3 seconds. I am asking you to understand that I have lived inside 3 seconds for 2 years, and I know exactly what they contain. I know what I can see in 3 seconds, what I can hear, what I can miss. What I cannot explain is the water. Maya here. My sister and I had been coming to this campsite in Glacier National Park since we were children. Same site every July. Same lake, same ritual on the first evening. She would wash her face in the water at dusk before the light went. She said it reset something after the drive. I never questioned it. It was hers. July 18th, 2022. The light was doing that specific glacier thing where it turns everything pink and gold right before it goes. She was standing at the edge of the lake in the shallows. 2 feet of water, flat, sandy bottom. I was 6 feet behind her on the bank watching her the way you watch someone you love doing something familiar. My phone lit up, our mother asking if we had arrived safely. I looked down. 3 seconds. I counted them later. I count them often. When I looked up, she was not there. I want to tell you about the water now, because this is the detail that I could not put in my statement to the sheriff without sounding like I had lost my mind. And it is the detail that I have thought about every day since. The water was still disturbed. Not the way water is disturbed when something falls into it. That specific inward disruption of displacement. Water rushing to fill a space. The disturbance was moving outward. The kind of disturbance a person standing in 2 feet of water creates just by being there. The gentle pressure of a body in still water pushing outward from the point of contact. She was not in the water, but the water was still reacting to her as if she was. I stood in the shallows in the exact spot where she had been standing. 2 feet of water, sandy bottom. The disturbance was moving away from me in all directions. Not from where I was standing, from where she had been standing 3 seconds before I looked up. I called her name. I ran the bank. I called 911 within 4 minutes. The Flathead County search covered the lake bottom 3 times. She was not in the lake. She was not in the surrounding terrain. She was not anywhere that 14 days of searching could locate. What the divers noted in their report, and what the lead investigator mentioned to me once and never again, was the sediment. In a 2-foot section of the lake floor directly below where my sister had been standing, the sand was disturbed in a pattern consistent with significant downward pressure from above. The kind of impression a person's feet make when they are standing still for several minutes. Except the impression was deep, deeper than standing. The kind of depth that sand makes when something has pressed down into it with force. Not the weight of a person, but the weight of something pressing a person down. The investigator said it was probably just the current shifting the sand. There is no current in that section of the lake. My sister's case is still open. The sediment pattern is in the dive report. The water was still reacting to her presence 3 seconds after she was gone. I do not know what that means. I know I looked down for 3 seconds. I know the water remembered her longer than 3 seconds. And I know that whatever took her, it did not take her upward. The sand says it took her down, into 2 feet of water with a flat, sandy bottom and nowhere to go. The shadow did not disappear the way shadows disappear when the light goes off. It stretched, upward, slowly, the way a shadow moves when the thing making it is being pulled away from the light source, except nothing was moving the light. The headlamp was on the ground. Nothing was moving the headlamp. The boy described it to me 3 years after it happened using the same words he used the night it happened. He was 7 then. He is 10 now. Children do not refine descriptions the way adults do. They do not sand down the edges of what they saw to make it easier to receive. He said what he saw the same way each time because he was not trying to make it believable. He was just saying what happened. Victor, 20 years of SAR. Some of you have heard 2 of my previous accounts on this channel. This one is different. This is not a protocol. This is not a coordinate. This is a case I worked personally and a boy I have stayed in contact with because I do not think anyone else was going to. A father and his 7-year-old son. 3-night backcountry trip in Olympic in August 2020. The father, Gerald, was the kind of camper I respect. Methodical, prepared. The kind of person who zip ties his tent flap before sleep because he wants to know the exact state of his camp when he wakes up. The boy woke at 2:17 a.m. to use the bathroom. His father was outside zip tying the tent flap. The boy lay inside and watched his father's shadow on the canvas. The headlamp on the ground outside created a clear shadow of Gerald working at the tent entrance. Normal shadow. Normal movement. His father's hands working the zip tie. The boy watched for about 90 seconds. Then the shadow began to stretch. Upward. Slowly. Like something above was pulling at it. The boy said the shadow's feet left the ground first, the bottom of the shadow lifting while the top remained connected, and the whole shape drew itself upward until it was gone. I have read a lot of disappearance reports in 20 years, a lot of accounts from witnesses describing the moment they last saw someone. Most of them describe what they saw. This boy described what should not have been possible. There is a difference, and once you have heard enough accounts, you learn to recognize it. What should not have been possible is where the truth lives in these cases. Gerald's headlamp was on the ground when the boy unzipped the tent 11 minutes later. The zip tie was half finished. One side secured, one side not. The tools he had been using were exactly where a person would set them down if they put them down deliberately rather than drop them in an emergency. His glasses were not on the ground. We found them 14 days into the search, 50 feet up in the canopy of a Douglas fir approximately 30 meters from the tent, in a fork between 2 branches, not fallen, set. Gerald wore thick prescription lenses. He could not see clearly beyond 3 feet without them. He could not have climbed that tree without them, which means whatever put them there, not Gerald, something that had Gerald, and decided to leave his glasses where searchers would eventually find them. The glasses are in the Olympic National Park evidence log. Gerald's case is still open. The boy is 10 years old. I spoke to him last month. He still describes the shadow the same way. He said, "It did not disappear. The way shadows disappear when a light goes off. It disappeared the way a shadow disappears when the thing making it is no longer there." I asked him if he thought about it often. He said he thinks about it every time someone zips up a tent near him. A shadow that stretched upward and disappeared. Glasses placed 50 feet up in a tree by something that was not Gerald. And a 10-year-old boy who thinks about it every time someone zips up a tent near him. Cases like these are why experienced wilderness guides say never rely on sight alone. Because sometimes what you are looking at is not the full picture. Subscribe to Obscure Nights and stay with us, because next week we go somewhere the full picture is even harder to accept. 3 accounts, 3 people, 3 witnesses describing the moment of disappearance using a sound. The humming stopped mid-note. The water was still moving, still reacting to a presence that was no longer there. The shadow disappeared the way a shadow disappears when the thing making it is no longer there. Not the sound of light going off, the sound of absence. That is what I told you to hold at the beginning. Each of these witnesses described the exact moment using the specific language of sound, not sight. Not sight because there was nothing to see. Sound because sound continued after the person stopped. Whatever is happening in these cases leaves a sensory echo. A humming that was mid-note. Water still disturbed by presence. A shadow still connected to a light source after the body creating it is gone. Something leaves before the physics of the place knows it is left. Now the part that matters if you are going into the backcountry this season. Elias was doing the right thing. He was using sound as presence, humming so the people at the fire could track him by ear when their eyes could not reach him. That instinct is correct. Make it a system. Before dark, establish a specific signal with everyone in your group. A whistle, a word, something that means I am here and fine, that takes 1 second to produce. Something specific enough that its absence is immediately recognized. If you are with children in a backcountry tent at night, speak to them, continuously. Your voice is proof of location in a way your shadow is never going to be. Gerald's boy was watching a shadow. He had no way to know when the shadow stopped being Gerald. And if you are ever at a water source in wilderness and the water is disturbed in a pattern that does not match what you can see, leave. Do not investigate the pattern. Do not try to explain it. The water remembers things that have already left. Trust what the water is telling you and move toward people. These are the cases where the fire was lit. The light was on. Someone was watching. And it did not matter. This is Obscure Nights, where the cases nobody talks about get told the way they actually happened. Subscribe, because next week the objects left behind are not messages. They are warnings. Good night.